So here's what I want to do. Let's just highlight just a couple of different pieces of her comment, and let's just discuss them one by one, okay? Because there's three of them there's three things in her comment that I want us to discuss a little bit. Let's just talk about this one. She says, no one should have the right to kill a pre-baby or any baby. Anyone have any thoughts about that statement?
I wouldn't necessarily use the term pre-baby, but I can see the point she's trying to make on the pro-choice blog. That's a good statement. It needs to follow with the dependent clause of why no one should be able to kill.
There's one other issue with this statement.
Okay, read the quote one more time.
No one should have the right to kill a pre-baby or any baby.
Oh, okay. I think my thing is this term pre-baby, baby. Now, not that I think that a fetus is a pre-baby as much as a baby is a pre-toddler, toddler is a pre-child, so on.
Right.
So, but that's, for most people, that's very ambiguous speech. It's very difficult, and it actually can dehumanize. And the point I want to make there is for Zoe that the reason we believe it is wrong to kill something and it is immoral is because of what that something is.
Right.
I don't think it's wrong to kill cockroaches because they are cockroaches.
Right.
I think it's wrong to kill innocent human beings because they're innocent human beings. So, Zoe, when you go back and if you re-engage in this type of conversation in another blog, I would encourage you use the term that most clearly identifies why we see it as wrong.
Right.
So I believe that it's always wrong to kill innocent human beings.
Okay, stop. Now that's the problem I have. I think we ought to be a little bit more careful, and I've made this same mistake. I even did this, I think, in one of my Science Matters videos where I said this and someone called me out on it and for the wrong reason. But here, when we say a statement that I think we should never, ever, ever, ever have the right to kill somebody, then you have put yourself in it. Now, I think generally that's true, but I think you might be better off saying, in general, we should not kill. Okay, this is why, like Frank Beckwith writes in his book, it is prima facie wrong to kill an innocent human being. But there are exceptions, and that's the problem. Is if the mother's life is threatened and you cannot save both, then I think you do have the right to kill that baby. And so, because you can either have two people die or one person die, and the pro-life thing would be to have only one person die and save the life that you can. And so that's why, like, if you put this on YouTube, there are people that are going to pick up on that, and I think we got to be careful to make sure you don't.
But at face value, like you were saying, it's prima facie wrong.
Right.
So you would definitely, the problem I think with always putting something like, again, we're getting into the superlatives, always putting something like in general, is you can sound wishy-washy. But again, she's talking to pro-choicers, so it's probably good to put that.
So trying to balance how to still seem genuine, authentic, and not add so many words that you become ununderstandable, but at the same time making it clear that, you know, at least what your actual views are, I think is important. Okay, then she said, the fetus does not want to die.
Yes, and the pro-choicer jumped on that later, and that's exactly what I would have done. You know, at vice versa. The fetus doesn't want to live. Well, the fetus doesn't want to. You know, it doesn't matter what the fetus wants or doesn't want, is capable of wanting, is not capable of wanting. What matters is the fact that you're killing an innocent human being.
And I think that what you said about the prima facie approach, at prima facie, if you qualify as a citizen, legal and naturalized in the United States, you have the right to vote. We don't assume that you don't want to vote. We just offer to you the right to vote. And pending some action on your part, you are given that.
Right.
Now, voting is a much smaller, more confined right, I believe, than the human right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
You can't vote until you're 18.
Right. But assuming that you are within the qualifications of being human, you are prima facie given the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, which means unless you have made, in other words, basically come to steps to do something otherwise, that is the assumed right under the land. And so what your wants or diswants are, if unclear, we go to the prima facie, you have the right to life.
I think an easier way to approach it
What,
in
that
a
wasn't
forum,
easy?
No. Sorry. I mean,
I know, it was wordy.
People who follow politics and care about something much more easy could be, okay, there are suicidal teens out there.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to somebody who came into a high school, picked out the suicidal kid, and shot them? Well, they wanted to die.
Right. But it doesn't
that
matter.
That doesn't matter. You murdered him.
Right.
You know?
Right.
That's a very good approach.
You don't. It doesn't
good.
matter if
My
someone.
political
that was
jargon.
better.
You know what? Some people liked what I said.
I am sure they did, and I'm glad you're on our show.
Me.
I appreciate
Some people
you,
get
Kyle.
attached to their arguments, but there is always a better, shorter way to address things in a forum.
Awesome.
All right.
We come full circle. You're right. It doesn't matter what the fetus wants. Like I'm not convinced that a late-term fetus can want anything besides food and sleep at this point. Like, that's you know.
Well, I mean, think about. You can ask, what does an infant want?
Right.
You really,
our desire for life is totally irrelevant to our
Eat, sleep,
value,
poop.
so it's
Right.
not. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So
Wait, no. Say that last part again.
Our desire for life is totally irrelevant to our value.
I think that's the critic. I mean, I know I was. I'm going to knock my mic around a minute. I know that I was wordy, and I know that you had a much better way, but I think that's the key phrase right there.
But I liked her illustration that
mine's
explained
more
it better.
effective.
I think her illustration is
Alright.
better, but I summed it up better.
Right.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Then
And I
Sorry.
expanded upon it better
Sorry,
than both
Kyle.
of you.
but now we ramp up to the more cringeworthy part of this, and I explained this to Zoe, and Zoe was totally fine. She was like, I know you're right. So I really like Zoe, but this is where we're gonna pick on what she said a little bit. She said, I don't feel sorry for women and men. I feel sorry for the babies who are killed.
I understand what she's trying to say.
What is she trying to say?
It's more sorrowful, and it's more sorrowful to me that a baby's being killed than the struggles and the situational problems that a mother and father are going through.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can emphasize. I had it right the first time. I can empathize with them about that,
Right.
and I can show proper human concern for the struggles of the
Right.
life of another human being.
Right.
But there is a point where the unborn suffers more. They die.
Right.
But she went about making that point very poorly to present it to a group of pro-choice
Now
people.
contrast that with what I wrote to her, and tell me if you disagree at all with what I'm saying here. What I wrote to her is I said I legitimately, like, I honestly feel sorry for the women who are in tough situations. Some of them have been raped or have abusive boyfriends or parents. I think you really do care about them too. You're just emphasizing your concern for the unborn, and we should be concerned about the unborn, but they're equally valuable as the men and the women that are having abortions.
Right.
Is there anything in there that you would disagree with?
No, and I think it's very important to point out their equal value. We're as pro-life for them as we are for the unborn child. Now, granted, being killed is a little worse than
and I didn't mention that.
being
so that's
poor. But
A little worse.
just
It's worse.
Just a little.
Yeah.
But you do need to emphasize that equal value because we're presented as not caring about adult human beings. Our stereotype is we don't care about women, we don't care about men. All you care about is babies.
And it is difficult, I think, to show that we really are compassionate about women, even though we are also trying to take away what they believe is a fundamental right. That is not an easy. I mean, that's something we talk about on here a lot, and we're not. And once again, I'm not saying as a talking point or we're pretending to be compassionate on these women. No, I really care about women, but at the same time, I'm also trying to take away what they believe, as some of them believe, is a fundamental right, which is the right to have an abortion. And sometimes that's a hard thing to communicate both sides of at the same time. What were you gonna say?
In thinking about this idea of the stereotype and how do we communicate, that we are compassionate. For the Fresno listeners, please visit 40daysfresno.org regarding our 40 Days for Life campaign, which is a prayer vigil. And one of the things that's really emphasized in it is a prayer vigil that occurs in front of an abortion facility. So the stereotypes get thrown at us all the time.
Yeah.
The big critical factor is showing we are compassionate for all, and especially for those who are most grievously having their rights revoked, which is the unborn. But we are compassionate for all. And the way that we do that involves a lot of details, but specifically for our campaign, for our event, we're looking at the possibility of having a medical center, a mobile RV medical center that's pro women's health and pro life, parked next to the event,
which is awesome,
which is way cool. The goal
really
being,
cool.
And it's not just, oh, this is really cool, we can help.
Right.
No, we want to show and administer compassion.
Yeah.
And that's a big step for a lot of pro-lifers, is to really push that compassion element. But I think that's the critical factor. And for Zoe, whether, I don't know how this, Josh could probably tell you the specifics of incorporating it into your blog posts, identifying the importance of compassion for all.
I think the problem is that sometimes pro-lifers, and we talk about this when we do Justice for All trainings, is sometimes we just get weird. We get tunnel vision, and I understand why. Is because we understand this thing about the unborn, and if everybody else understood what we understood about the unborn, then they wouldn't be being killed so much, 3,000 a day. There wouldn't there's
maybe
that's a big deal, right? And so we're gosh, if people just understood this, and so we get tunnel vision, and then we forget that we're talking also to a valuable human being.
And you forget.
And we don't treat them very well sometimes because we are only focused on the unborn and not on the needs of the person right in front of us.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to interrupt that, and you forget how to communicate to a fellow human being a belief that they don't see yet.
Right.
And you have to imagine, many of us have come from being pro-choice, or at least not realizing why we're pro-life at one point in time. And we've come through all these years of training and this understanding to the position we're at today.
Right.
And so you have to learn how to reach somebody who's holding an opposite belief.
Right.
You can't just hammer them. If a pro-choicer comes up to you and starts yelling or telling you their position, you start building a wall.
Right.
You start defending yourself.
Right.
And so instead of two people defending themselves and building higher walls, you have to break through through some of the dialogue techniques that we talk about, and actually showing human compassion, like you were talking to a normal person about a normal subject that you've discovered something new about.
So what you've noticed here, and I think this is really valuable, is that, and so I want to highlight this, is that a lot of times we try to communicate something, but we don't do a very good job of doing it, I think. And so always going back to that, instead of all these rabbit trails, it's bad for the economy, it's bad for, it hurts women and all this. Just look, okay. We know the unborn is alive because it's growing, right?
Right.
And we know the unborn is human because it has human parents. And human beings like you and me, we're all valuable, right? And it's bad to discriminate against people because they're smaller and less developed. And so it seems like abortion's wrong, right? If all those things are true, it seems like then that's what this means. And if they have a problem, it's okay, well, this is the problem that's in my head, is I've got this thing where I think the unborn is human like you and me, and your arguments keep on presupposing that they're not. And so can you help me understand why you don't think it's human? If we could just stick with that and focus on it like a laser beam and just and stay on it, then I think we're going to do a better job communicating our position. And at the same time, we can say, look, I really do care about women too.
Right.
I'm just really concerned that maybe these valuable women that I care about are accidentally killing people.
You've been watching Life Report, pro-life talk, real world answers. Life Report is produced by Right to Life of Central California. Visit their website at fresnoprolife.org.